Let us see the adaptation of the transfer technique when performed with two health workers, both in front of the patient. A second health worker is required whenever the assessment enlightened insufficient motor skills of the patient, especially concerning the lower limb strength and/or coordination and/or motor programming. We want to underline that working with another person presents the critical points explained in the video with the second health worker positioned behind. When the second health worker is side to side with his colleague, the main deficit of the patient is lower limbs weakness. Thus, the patient will need a greater support for his body weight rather than guidance during the movement performance. The second health worker has to provide an additional support for the patient's body weight that he is no longer able to bear with the strength of just his lower limbs. Respect with the technique with one health worker, few differences has to be underlined. It is necessary to position the wheelchair about 5 inches far from the bed as to allow the second health worker to be as close as possible to the patient during the maneuver execution and to move as required by the movement. Each health worker handle one half of the patient's body, left and right, and both perform the same actions. The hand that lay on the shoulder blade is the closest one with respect to the patient, and it has to be laid with the dorsal face of the hand and the wrist in extension, as shown in this video. Once the maneuver has begun, the two health workers has to be perfectly synchronized and not to compromise their and patient stability. The second health worker moves back and the first moves towards the bed. Considering the high deficit level of the patient, it is recommended to sit the patient on the new surface with reduced speed, respect to the same maneuver performed with one health worker, as the patient's movement control capacity is reduced. Let us see an example of lack of coordination between the two health workers. Please note how the health worker with the black trousers does not lay her knees over the patient's knee, and also note how this simple mistake can have severe consequences. First, it does not provide the patient with the necessary stability to successfully and safely complete the movement. Second, the health worker exposes herself to a great risk of musculoskeletal damage because she bends her back rather than her hips, and also because she remains far from the patient.